Welcome back to the What Are You Made Of podcast with your boy, Mike C-Roc. Thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate your listenership. We appreciate your support. Please, if you haven't already, go subscribe on iTunes and or Spotify or your favorite podcast platform. Also, if you like to watch these, I put them all up on the YouTube channel at Mike C-Roc Ciorrocco. Go check that out. Subscribe. Tell your friends and family about the What Are You Made Of movement. It's the only way that I can spread this around the world is with your help. We need numbers, guys. We need What Are You Made Of movement and what it's all about. Waymo rule number one, the dominating rule of Waymo, is to turn all setbacks, negativity, letdowns into rocket fuel for your future. And once you can accommodate that or accomplish that and really understand that in your mind, your life will never be the same. Anything you run into, again, you just know that you're in a training session or refuel, and it changes people's lives. And that's why we want to get this out to as many people as possible. So with that being said, I want to welcome Mike Szczesniak to the show. What's up, Mike? What are you made of, brother?
Mike, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to chop it up. I love the mission of the show, so I was looking forward to this one.
Well, in the spirit of the show, we'd love to hear what kind of things you're made of, man.
Yeah, let's see how far back do we want to go. I mean, I think if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you're probably like, how the heck did all this happen? You know, it's kind of like this interesting scatter plot of I don't like the word expertise, but experience, and kind of getting me where we're at today with this high performance coaching consulting company about 4 years in. But what's interesting is I resisted the coaching industry for probably about 3 years prior to jumping in. And a big piece of that was just a stigma that I had around the industry. You know, back then, Instagram wasn't as big as it is now, but it was still pretty big. And, you know, I just saw a bunch of like 17-year-old kids on Instagram with the words life coach in their bio. And I'm like, huh? Like, I came from an athletic background where the coaches had the answers. And I thought that's what coaching meant in this adult world of entrepreneurship. And I was just very misunderstood on my end. Having the answers and providing them is really consulting, which we do from time to time with some of our clients. But the coaching world is helping figure out how to navigate breakthroughs. I didn't understand that, and I resisted it for a long time. But early on in my journey, if we were to backtrack even further than that, I spent about 6.5 years in corporate as a software engineer, building and growing a software engineering career in Manhattan, in New York City. And you know, that's how I funded all of my business endeavors. I started 3 different companies while I was at my last company. I spent 5 years at the last company. By the time I left, I was a senior engineer, engineering order processing systems. But early on, like that climb in corporate was very, very linear. Every year was a big pay raise or a big promotion. And on the outside, it looked like I had it going on, right? Like I had all the targets that we were striving for, the things that we want, right? Like 6-figure salary, luxury apartment, senior title, all by like the age of 25. But behind closed doors, when we hear these stories so often nowadays, we realize that that's not really what was going on. And while it was beautiful on the outside, behind closed doors, I was struggling a ton with anxiety and panic attacks. And for me, it was like a year-long journey.
When you were 25, like you were feeling that at that moment?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. 2024. It was 2000. Yeah. 2014, January 2014. So that must've been, I was 23, like almost 24 years old. And it, like a lot of that for me stemmed from high achiever, feeling like I need to do more, right? Having massive goals and thinking that I was looking at like the blueprint, right? I didn't realize social media was a highlight reel. But how that all pieces into right now is, after about diving in for a year-long journey of going to the doctors, getting my chest x-ray, doing breathing tests, like I thought it was a physiological issue. I thought something was wrong with my lungs. I didn't know what was going on. I had never heard what anxiety or panic attacks were. Didn't know anyone going through it. Back then, it wasn't cool to talk about mental health on social media. And you pair that with the mindset I had of like, I thought I was looking at the people that had what I wanted, and I thought I was looking at the blueprint to get there.
Right.
I didn't realize that no one was sharing the L's that they were taking. Right. Those became this very like dangerous combination for me. And it got to the point where like I realized I had no clue what it meant to be productive. I thought it was like being busy, checking things off a to-do list. I thought if I wasn't working 47 hours a day, I wasn't being productive enough. Right. So it started this like massive journey of just geeking out about this. And the reason I say that that kind of led to today is because I feel like that cracked that door open a little bit for that industry that I was resisting for so long. Because now productivity is really only about a small fraction, maybe 20% of the work we do with our clients, but it's the one that opened the door for me. And it will always be like my baby when it comes to the high performance world. And that played a huge role for me. So talk
Yeah.
about like
Yeah. Wait a minute.
setback
But
into
the problem that you had there, and I talk about this a lot, is the journey to success is invisible for
yeah
most. And so that's one of the things that, as I set out on this, what are you made of movement, I already have my goals written down, my vision, where I want to go.
yeah
It's not a matter of belief that I'm going to get there for me. It's a difference. And I talked about this recently more than anything is a new thing that I'm talking about is knowing is stronger than believing. And so I
hmm
know where I'm going. And when I know that where I'm going and I have that already, now I said to myself, okay, I want to share my journey, the struggles, the hurdles, the wins with everyone and document it all over the place.
yeah
And so because of that reason right there, I know there's young people that are trying to there's not even just young people, there's older people trying new things and they run into a hurdle. They go into a setback. They have anxiety. They have mental blocks, like mental, like I go through it sometimes myself now still to this day where I self-doubt, all that stuff is natural, man. It's all normal. Now,
yeah
anxiety, not necessarily with your chest, but it's all stuff that people go through. And
yeah
even the most dominating, successful people in the world. So the journey has to be made more transparent. I'm on a mission to do that. And that's what you're talking about, right?
yeah completely agree. And I think intrinsically this became part of my mission, right? Because I knew what it was like to not see that, not have that transparency everywhere else. So, I do my best to be as transparent as possible with my journey and like what it's been like walking away from that cushy engineering role and all this sort of stuff. And like just highlighting the stuff that we don't see all the time. Like we see sunshine and rainbows in entrepreneurship, which is just not true. You see like the photos on Instagram where people emptied their savings account to have a bunch of cash on their lap in the middle of this rented Lambo. It's like,
Yeah.
man, that's not what it's about, and that's
So,
also like it's not always going to be wins. So yeah, I
so,
completely
so,
agree.
so when you made the move,
Yep.
did you just make sure you had enough money set aside to get into entrepreneurship? Because you're not going to make money right away necessarily.
Yeah, and I didn't.
Right.
um,
So how did you, like, for those watching that are working for someone else and would love to go work on their own, but they just are scared, they think, and then that's what traps them.
yep.
Like, what did you go through?
Yeah, so I was creating from like pretty much day one at my last company. Like I mentioned earlier, like this was the third company that I started while I was in that engineering role. And it was the one that I took full time. I built it as a side hustle for about a year and a half. So I had somewhat of a proof of concept. Kind of screwed myself over on that because I ripped it to the floor and restarted and rebuilt the model completely differently. So I wouldn't advise doing that, but I had been building it for a while. And for me, what I realized is, I had a lot of a very negative viewpoint around money, which was, I didn't believe that I did, but it took me going down to a retreat in Fiji for a Tony Robbins event, Life and Wealth Mastery. And there were some exercises in there that really started to dig deep on like what I believed about money. And I thought I had this positive viewpoint of like, use it as a tool and like all these things, like it provides opportunity essentially. But what I didn't realize is all that I wanted was to leave corporate. And
Right.
the only thing in the way, the only target was like, I got to make as much in my business as I do in my corporate job, which I was making a lot of money in corporate. And that becomes very difficult when you're doing the 5 to 7 a.m. and 7 to 11 p.m. hustle.
Right.
So intrinsically, money became everything, which is obviously not a very healthy mindset. And before I left Fiji, I put 2 hours on my calendar for when I got back to the States to really get accurate with my mental or like my financial picture. Like, what did it look like? Could I make it happen right now? And if I could, how many months worth of money would I have? Like, what's my runway? And for me, and if I didn't, what needs to happen for me to get to that point, because it's not making, six figures before I leave corporate. Like that's just, it didn't need to happen that way. It was a story I was telling that was BS.
Yeah.
So it ended up being the case that I had over 6 months worth of a runway, and I was just telling a BS story. And I gave my notice about 6 days after I got back from Fiji.
And what was that feeling that you had?
It was scary as hell at first. And I think that's part of it. Part of it becomes from like, I'm just like, I like to be part of a team. And the company that I was with in corporate, like we had experienced, they announced 2,000 jobs cut the year before I left. And most of them were my friends. So like by the time I left, there were only 2 other senior engineers at the company, and both of them were on my team. Our team had stayed very, very tight for those entire 5 years that I was there. So it was like a family, and I felt bad. I actually gave a 6 weeks notice because a project we were working on was really important. So that part was really difficult for me, but the freedom aspect was like crazy. I would say the difficult part was doing that. And the only reason I took 6 days to do it is because I wanted to go home and talk to my folks, because I was going to visit, because it was actually my birthday and my sister's birthday in Fiji. So we were going back to celebrate. And I wanted to be like, hey, this is what I'm going to do, not this is what I did, and just involve them in the conversation. And my parents always supported me, but like, they definitely didn't think as entrepreneurially. And my mom like straight up looked like she saw a ghost when I first told her.
Yeah. So
But
that's the danger of telling them ahead of time, dude. Like, when I'm thinking
I
about
was,
that,
sorry, continue.
no, when I'm thinking about that, a lot of times I like to make moves and then tell people what happened afterwards, because I'm afraid that the people around me don't think as big as I do.
Yeah.
And they could talk me off off of my mission.
Yeah. At
So
that point, I was so like, I wasn't including them in the decision-making process.
right.
I was including them in the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So while my mom looked like she saw a ghost at the beginning, by the end of it, because dude, at that point I was 27, like no family, no kids, like it was the time to bet on myself. And by the end of that conversation, everyone was in agreement. So I think at that point I had really instilled, like they had 27 years to realize that I don't think the same as other people, and that like I was going to do something more than engineering, because they knew it. They saw me, everything that I was doing outside of the corporate world. So I don't think that there was any opportunity to really, really sell me on another idea. It was just like a respect play for me, the way I saw it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the only scary part. Once that conversation was had with my boss, it was like, it was one of the more liberating feelings I've ever had in my life.
Now that freedom that you get and that feeling can be dangerous too, because when you have that freedom, now it's all of a sudden it's Mike has to hold Mike accountable. There's not a supervisor or team or any of that. It's accountability lies on me now.
Yeah.
And that could be dangerous as well, right?
Dude, it was mind blowing to me how long it took to find a routine that felt good. Right? Like for me, when I was in corporate, freedom was like being able to work out during the day. Like that's all I cared about. Like that was, I was blown away by how happy that made me, and figuring out what that schedule looked like what parts of my calendar, because I had control over all of it now.
Right.
It's like figuring out what fit where, like in the best, like where was my energy highest, and like what work would be best used with that energy. It was interesting to me how long it took to do that. And luckily, like I'm a fairly disciplined guy, and like we were able to make great progress, but it was a learning curve for sure.
Yeah. And the thing is that like for me, I love it because I work out. I'll get up and do work first. When I first wake up, get out of bed, I do work. Then I go to the gym at 8:30, and till about 8:30, from 8:30 to 9:30, that's my time.
Mm-hmm.
And I go at it, and it is what it is. And then I can get back into the office again and do some more. Then if I want to go for a bike ride with the kid, now I get to work from home right now, but I want to go for a bike ride with the kids at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. I'm not at the office like back in the day, like it used to be, you know what I mean? And then if I want to work, like, have dinner, put the kids to bed, and then do some more work, I can do that. I'm putting the
Exactly.
time in, I'm structuring it around me, and I'm getting more done. And I love that same thing, man. I love it.
Yeah, dude, and like I'm on a very similar schedule, and it took a while to get there. Like I've tested multiple different morning routines, like up at 4:30, using that first hour to really prime my day well in the gym by 5:30, working out with my buddy. This is when I was still competing in powerlifting, and I would be in the gym for like 2.5 hours, and then I would be able to get to the office by 9, when I was
Yeah.
still using my office. I have to go move out this week because we terminated the lease, because I'm like, I don't need this. And it's like I tried a lot of these different things, and right now I'm really vibing on the up early, working for 2 to 3 hours, and then getting into the exercise, and either going for a run or getting a workout and then taking Shaq for a walk, and then I'm back to work by like 11.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know and Shaq is my dog, by the way, for
Yeah.
anyone
Yeah. I
listening. We
assumed,
talked about this
I
before
assumed
we
that.
press record. And it took a while to find that. And if I want, most days I can get like a 4 o'clock, like this Friday I got a 4 o'clock tea time with my parents to go play golf. And if we want to do that, we can. But it's
Yeah.
like, it's you have to earn that freedom, I guess. And for me, earning it was like the 5 years in corporate, making the money to fund all the experiences that led up until now.
Right. Now, so what are you into now, man? What's Hack Your Fear all about?
Yeah. So the first program I ever created, as I really like dove into the space, because remember, I resisted the coaching and consulting space for like 3 years. And even though some of the closest people in my life were like, man, Mike, you could really help a lot of people in this space, I'm like, nope, not for me. I saw the kids on Instagram. I'm like, they got no experience, no clients, no business. Like, what's going on? I don't want to be associated. But fast forward a couple of years, I met Brendon Burchard, who's the world's leading high performance coach. And just high performance, it gave me permission to enter the space. They were words I could resonate with. And I wrote my Fear Hacking Academy on the flight home from that event. And it was like Ohio to New York. It was like an hour and a half flight. So we were like really grinding out on the keyboard, but basically think of fear hacking as like a sales blitz on steroids that's injected with high performance, right? Like I always say, I'm not in the business of how my clients make their money. I'm in the business of helping them to do more without the burnout, without the anxiety, the overwhelm, all these things that we think come with it. And that's really what fear hacking is. Decisions are emotional, they're not logical. And as soon as we can start to hack that decision-making process, we can start to create massively different reality, different results that we want
Yeah.
in our lives and our businesses.
So let me ask you, just we don't want to get into all of it because obviously you want people to engage with you, but what are a couple tips that you have in that program?
Yeah. Honestly, man, it's not rocket science. It's like, we need to get super clear on what drives the needle, and most of us don't take the time to do it, right? If we're going to talk specifically around productivity, often it's doing less, not doing more, right? We need to subtract to actually multiply. And a lot of the work that we do, it's called fear hacking 30, 60, 90. And the reason is we break a 90-day window into 3 30-day blitzes. Each one serves a different purpose, but the core components of it are really like, what action items move the needle in life and in business, because we have to have both pieces. My clients always come to me because they want to make more money and have a bigger impact, and then they're blown away when the transformation happens in the life stuff, right? So that clarity is really, really important. So what are the action items? Like, first of all, what do we want to create, right? Then we can reverse engineer the action items, and we just measure everything, right? Like,
Yeah.
what are you going to do, and how much of a quantity? And we start to overload it over time. We introduce some different strategies to alleviate some of the stress and the overwhelm that might typically come with it. But that's it, man. Take the target, reverse engineer the action items, assign quantities, and then measure and adapt every couple of weeks. That's really what we do with our clients. And
the problem a lot of people have is they don't know what the action items are. They'd say, listen, dude, I'll work hard. I'll do whatever it takes, but I don't know what to do.
mm-hmm.
How do you dial them in on that when you're working with them?
Yeah, well, I think this is where my engineering, like just passionately curious nerd in me really like kind of comes to light. And at the end of the day, it's just, we need to be asking different questions, right? Quality of questions determines quality of the answers, and the answers lead to the decisions we make. The decisions lead to the results. Results are a reality. So if we can ask different questions, everything changes. So in this particular case, the questions become, cool, well, what am I doing on a daily basis? Out of that list, what's actually leading to results and what's just fluff, right? There's a great practice that Brian Tracy shares in Eat the Frog called the Law of Three, which essentially says that 30% of the results come from 30% of the action items lead to 90% of the results. So if any business owner listening to this really writes down everything that they're responsible for, that if they don't get done, everything explodes, the business goes to hell in a handbasket, they'll typically have 7 to 10 items on that list. Now, of that list, 3 of those items yield 90% of the results. Everything else should be either eliminated or delegated. So
yep.
When we could start to get those filters in place, and that one question that we filter is just simply, if I can only do one thing on this list that would give me the most results and have the biggest impact on my life and my business, what would it be? You just ask that three times, man. We circle those questions. Everything else, maybe we're not in a point where we can afford to eliminate or delegate, but at least we have a different lens to look at, right? Like what's more worthy of our time.
Yep.
And that's where we start. And then we just go deep on, okay, out of maybe that, we need to filter a little bit deeper, right? Because in our blitzes, we typically have like 2 to 3 business items that we'll work on, and then 2 to 3 life things. And when I say life things, I mean like the personal stuff, health and fitness, mindfulness, personal development, as simple as like making your bed, like little wins that we can stack.
Yep.
And that's where we start. You know, we just get super curious on what are the action items that are populating your calendar, and we figure out what's actually moving the needle. Everything that's not needs to get off the calendar, because, I mean, if we look at those numbers, 30% of the actions lead to 90% of the results. Well, we get rid of the other 70% of the calendar, there's a whole lot of opportunity to compound those results.
Absolutely.
You know, you fill the rest of that calendar. If you're an overachiever like me and you still want to work 100% of the calendar, man, that's 300% of the results. It scales really fast.
And how did like a lot of people that are looking to get into this, and again, in your position, you know, if you're thinking the right way, and I know you are, you're not worried about other people coming into that field because you got an abundance mindset. But for other people that are listening that want to get into this field, and one of their concerns may be that they don't have the history, for like, if they get a client, their clients say, well, can you give me some testimonials or some examples of who people you've worked with? How did you get over that hurdle? Like for me, I coach because I have a company that has 30 employees and I've taken them to just under 10 million twice. You know, I have results I can back, you know, and that gives me confidence. But for people that don't, how did you get over that hurdle?
Yeah, well, honestly, man, so fear hacking is where I started, and I started to build a company. And a lot of that was testing out with 1, undercharging, right? Getting people in the door. 2, bartering services to get more client testimonials and results for people because I knew this stuff worked, man. Fear hacking was built around a practice that I literally deployed for myself in my personal life. I'm like, wow, that worked. What happens when I point it at the business stuff? And I'm like, wow, that worked even better. So I knew that the stuff worked. I just needed to get results for people. So that's where we started. And for me, I still wasn't that confident selling it. So what I did, and this is just the route I took, I'm like, cool, well, I got into this world because of Brendan and his company. Let me go and invest and get certified there, right? So I had a validated system that people pay Brendan north of 7 figures for. I'm Mike, and I don't charge $1 million for it, you know, and then you start. And again, with that system, there was also a lot of bartering services, getting people in the door because I knew that it worked. And when I could get people in the door, I then had results that I can go and sell with. And it just started there. So, you know, I would say if you really believe in the system that you're working with, find someone that you can barter services for, or do a paid beta. There needs to be skin in the game. You can't give stuff away for free in this industry. It's just a sad reality. People don't take it seriously, and then it's a waste of everybody's time. So those are the 2 routes that I would take: barter services or do a paid beta where it's a much lower cost of entry, and just get people stupid results. And when you have that, use that to fill in your next enrollment period and stuff like that.
Yeah. And then when you get a prospect, do you have it like a consultation with them to make sure they're right for you? Not whether you can sell them or not on yourself and your program, but if they're the right for you, because a lot of times people come into coaching situations and they're here and they only want to go here. Yeah. And it leaves you very, very little room to do anything with them. Or they might want to go here, but they're not willing to do the work. So you could have the best program in the world and they don't apply it. And then, you're not going anywhere. But so how do you handle that part?
Yeah, honestly, man, that's part of the sales conversation. It depends on the product offering, right? For some of the higher level stuff, we'll do strategy sessions and stuff like that. And in the industry, a lot of people call it a strategy session and then it's just a sales call, right? Which is pretty frustrating, to be honest. We'll do actual strategy sessions, generate breakthroughs. And that's kind of getting a feel both ways, right? Because there's so many different flavors of coaching. But in some of the lower ticket stuff where we're doing like enrollment periods, that's part of our sales conversation. And we're just very careful with the sales guys that we brought on board, because overselling it gets no one any victories, right? Because your clients are going to be pissed off. They're not going to re-sign, right? They're sure as hell not going to tell anybody about your product or service. If anything, they are going to say stuff about it, and it's not going to be good because it's going to be nowhere near the results they wanted to get.
Right.
And I think that just needs to be a transparent part of that sales process. Like, what do you want to create? And if we help you get there and we both agree that we're in alignment here, is this something we want to partner on? Because at the end of the day, it's a partnership.
Absolutely, man.
It's not worth their money or either of our time if they're not bought into the mission.
So anytime I buy something from someone, whether it's a product or service, and I have, with the company that we have, we buy a lot of stuff, especially services. I always try to make the people I buy from look as good as possible. And in doing that, and what's required of me to do that is it's understand it's a two-way street. I got a job to do. I'm paying them money for a service, but it's my job to implement it and take action on it. And if I don't do that, their product doesn't work. And then it doesn't validate to me that I made a good purchase. So in order to validate to myself that I made a good purchase, I try to make everybody I work with look as good as possible, because I feel like that's my duty to do that. And so, you're right on with that, man. But so let me ask you this. Why did you come on the show today?
Dude, we had some mutual connections that spoke extremely highly of you. And I was like, man, I'm excited to connect with Mike. Plus he's got a great name. And, it just sounded like a connection made in heaven, man. And I'm glad, because I think that the mission of your show is super cool. I think the way that our journeys unfold, it's like that Steve Jobs quote, like, you can't connect the dots moving forward, only looking back, or whatever it is. Like, I love that quote, and I butchered the hell out of it right there.
We get it. We get it though.
Like a whole piece of that, the whole piece is the journey. And like, my journey is a little interesting, and I thought it might be an interesting fit, but I love the mission of the show, man. And I was honored to be a part of it.
Thank you, man.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming on, and I believe I'm coming on your show.
I'm fired up for that
time for that soon too. So we'll look forward to bringing the What Are You Made Of movement to your audience. But now, how can my audience engage with you or get in touch with you, or what kind of services can you offer them?
Yeah,
plug away, by the way, because man, when people come on my show, I want them to be successful as possible. Any way I can possibly help them. So
I appreciate that. If the conversation's been valuable, like, the best place to get more content is the podcast, which I'm fired up to have you coming on in the next couple of weeks. It's just the Results Engine podcast. So wherever you're listening to this, we don't do a ton on YouTube or Facebook. So if you're watching the live play, like, go to a podcasting platform, but just search the Results Engine podcast. We do 2 interviews a week and 1 like tactical solo episode every Friday. So we're doing 3 uploads a week over there, which I'm fired up about. It's one of the biggest pieces of content output for the whole company right now. Other than that, I'm just Mike Szczesniak on Instagram and all social media platforms. Slide in the DMs if you have any questions. If fear hacking sounds like a fit, I'd love to have those conversations and help get you people next level results.
All right, Mike, thank you so much for joining us today, man. I look forward to coming on your show. If there's anything your boy C-Roc can do for you, just reach out. And
thanks for having me.
You guys have been listening to the What Are You Made Of podcast with your boy C-Roc. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening. Please go subscribe. podcast platforms of your choice. What Are You Made Of with your boy C-Roc, and on YouTube. And until next time, be great.